My name is Sophia, and I am 32 years old. For 5 years, I worked as a systems engineer at TechVision, managing our biggest client, Next-Gen Innovations. Everything was fine until that fateful Monday, when my boss Robert suddenly fired me. I still remember his exact words, face red with anger. "Shut down your workstation and leave immediately." Little did he know that following his order would trigger a catastrophic chain of events. Before I tell you how I accidentally destroyed my boss's career, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you enjoy workplace drama stories like this one. I have always been passionate about technology. Growing up in a small town outside Seattle, I spent most of my teenage years taking apart computers and putting them back together. My parents thought it was just a phase, but I knew it was my calling. After graduating with a computer science degree from the University of Washington, I landed my dream job at TechVision. TechVision is a mid-sized software company with around 200 employees. Our modern office in downtown Seattle boasts floor-to-ceiling windows with stunning views of the Space Needle. The open floor plan was designed to promote collaboration, but as you will see, no amount of architectural planning can fix toxic management. Robert Parker, my former boss, was 42 years old when this incident occurred. He had been promoted to IT manager just 8 months prior, despite his limited technical expertise. The promotion surprised everyone in our department because Robert was known for his micromanagement style and tendency to take credit for his team members' work. He had a business background but struggled with the technical aspects of our projects. Instead of acknowledging his limitations, he compensated by enforcing unnecessary protocols and dismissing valuable input from experienced team members like myself. Next-Gen Innovations. Our biggest client was a technology giant, preparing to launch a revolutionary product after 2 years of development. This product was set to disrupt the market and potentially double their company value. The pressure was immense, and failure was not an option. They had invested millions in this launch, and TechVision was responsible for ensuring their demonstration systems ran flawlessly during the event. My team consisted of several talented individuals who became both colleagues and friends. Marcus Thompson, a 36-year-old network specialist with a dry sense of humor, had been at TechVision even longer than I had. He was my closest ally, and often the voice of reason during stressful situations. Jessica Chen, 26, was our newest team member, eager to prove herself, but still learning the ropes. Daniel Rodriguez, 41, was our veteran hardware technician, who could diagnose a system issue faster than anyone I knew. The system I managed was special. It was a dedicated terminal that connected directly to Next-Gen's demonstration environment. This was not just any connection. It was a custom, configured, secure link that I had personally set up. The terminal required specific authentication protocols and had unique settings that only I fully understood. This was not due to any intention to create dependency, but rather because the system had evolved over time with my guidance and documentation had not kept pace with the changes. As Next-Gen's product launch approached, tension in the office became palpable. Everyone was working overtime testing and retesting systems to ensure nothing would go wrong. The stakes were incredibly high, and Robert began to display increasingly erratic behavior. He scheduled unnecessary meetings, demanded redundant status reports, and second-guessed technical decisions that had already been validated. The week before the incident, I noticed Robert spending more time than usual hovering around my workspace. He would ask pointed questions about the Next-Gen terminal, seemingly trying to understand its configuration. At the time, I thought he was finally taking an interest in the technical details of our most important client relationship. In retrospect, I realize he was preparing to assert control over a system he barely understood. 1 week before the incident, the first real signs of trouble emerged. Robert called an impromptu department meeting early Monday morning. With a PowerPoint presentation he had clearly prepared over the weekend, he announced a new set of procedures for all client-facing systems, effective immediately. From now on, all system configurations must be approved by me personally. Robert declared pacing at the front of the conference room. Additionally, we will be standardizing all access protocols across clients to improve efficiency. My stomach dropped. The Next-Gen terminal was intentionally non-standard because their security requirements were unique. Standardizing it would mean dismantling months of careful configuration and potentially introducing vulnerabilities just days before their crucial product launch. After the meeting, I approached Robert privately in his office. "I understand the desire for standardization," I explained calmly, But the next-gen system has specific requirements that won't work with the new protocols. Their launch is in 8 days, and making these changes now introduces unnecessary risk. Robert leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. Sophia, I appreciate your input, but this decision has been made. The new procedures apply to all systems, no exceptions. But Robert, their security team specifically requested these custom configurations. If we change them now without proper testing, we could compromise their entire launch. His face flushed slightly. Are you suggesting I don't understand the implications of my own directives? Not at all, I backpedaled, sensing his growing irritation. I am just concerned about the timing. Perhaps we could implement these changes after the next-gen launch. The changes happen now, he said firmly. End of discussion. The next day, we had a scheduled progress meeting with the next-gen team. Their project manager, Laura Bennett, and their chief technology officer, Alan Reynolds, joined us in our largest conference room. I prepared a detailed presentation on the system status and readiness for the launch. During my portion of the meeting, I carefully avoided mentioning the potential configuration changes, hoping to discuss the matter further with Robert before alarming the client. However, when Laura asked about any planned system updates before the launch, Robert interjected before I could respond. Actually, we are implementing company-wide standardization of all client systems this week, he announced proudly. It is part of our continuous improvement initiative. Alan Reynolds frowned. We were not informed of any planned changes to our demonstration environment. Our security team approved the current configuration after extensive testing. Robert smiled dismissively. The changes are minimal and will only improve system performance. Sophia's team will ensure everything runs smoothly. I felt all eyes turn to me, including Robert's warning glare. Trapped between my boss's directive and my professional integrity, I chose a diplomatic response. We will prioritize system stability and security above all else, I said carefully. Any changes will be thoroughly tested before implementation. After the clients left, Robert pulled me aside. You nearly contradicted me in there, he hissed. From now on, let me handle client communications about system changes. That evening, I stayed late at the office, running tests on a sandbox environment to understand the full impact of Robert's proposed changes. As I suspected, the new standardized protocols would break several key functions of the next-gen demonstration system. There was no way to implement these changes safely before the launch. The next morning, I documented my findings in a detailed email to Robert, copying our technical director, Brian Phillips. The email outlined specific incompatibilities and proposed postponing the changes until after the launch. I received no response from Robert, but later that afternoon, I noticed my email had been removed from Brian's inbox. Somehow Robert had deleted my message before Brian could see it. Over the next few days, my teammates began to notice the tension. Marcus caught me in the break room, concern evident in his expression. Everything okay with you and the new boss? He asked quietly. You two seemed pretty tense in yesterday's stand-up. I sighed, pouring myself another cup of coffee. Robert wants to implement system-wide changes right before the next-gen launch. It is a terrible idea, but he won't listen. Marcus winced. Classic Robert. Wants to make his mark without understanding the consequences. The worst part is I am working extra hours to create contingency plans in case something goes wrong, but I cannot openly prepare because he has forbidden any special treatment for next-gen system. Want me to back you up? I could raise some concerns from the network perspective. I appreciated Marcus's offer, but shook my head. Better not put yourself in his crosshairs too. I will handle it. That Friday, just 5 days before the launch, I received an urgent call from Alan Reynolds at Next General Sophia. We are seeing some intermittent connectivity issues with the demonstration environment. Is everything okay on your end? My heart raced. I had not implemented any of Robert's changes yet, but perhaps someone else had begun the process without my knowledge. Let me check right away. I promised, already pulling up the system diagnostics. After 30 minutes of investigation, I discovered that someone had indeed made changes to the network configuration, though not the full standardization Robert had demanded. The partial changes were causing the connectivity problems. The access logs showed the modifications had been made using Robert's credentials. I fixed the issues immediately and called Alan back to confirm the system was stable again. Then I documented everything and sent another email to both Robert and Brian, making it clear that unauthorized changes had compromised system stability and that no further modifications should be made before the launch. This time Robert replied almost immediately. Do not contact the technical director directly about operational matters. All communications should go through me. We will discuss your insubordination on Monday. The weekend passed with me checking the system remotely every few hours, anxious that more unauthorized changes might occur. By Sunday night, my anxiety had turned to determination. I would stand my ground professionally armed with documentation and technical evidence to protect both my client and my company from Robert's misguided decisions. Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. 2 days before NextGen's big launch and the office atmosphere was electric with stress. I arrived early as was my habit to run comprehensive system checks before the day began. Everything was functioning normally, but I noticed several attempted logins to the NextGen system over the weekend from an internal IP address I recognized as Robert's. At 9:30 a.m., an email from Robert appeared in my inbox with the subject line, Urgent System Failure Report. I opened it immediately confused, since all my monitoring showed systems were functioning perfectly. Sophia, we experienced a critical outage on the Peterson account last night. As the senior systems engineer, you should have been monitoring and prevented this failure. Please prepare a full explanation for this afternoon's executive meeting. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The Peterson account was a small client that I had not been assigned to in over a year. It had been transferred to Jessica's portfolio during the last reorganization. More importantly, I had full access to all system alerts, and there had been no notifications about any Peterson issues. I forwarded the email to Jessica with a quick note. Any problems with Peterson I should know about? Her response came within minutes. No issues at all. System has been stable. Not sure what Robert is referring to. Robert was setting me up to take a fall for a problem that didn't exist. The realization sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just micromanagement anymore. It was deliberate sabotage of my position. At 11 a.m., Robert's administrative assistant sent a calendar invitation for a one-on-one meeting in his office at noon. The subject simply read, Performance Discussion. No agenda, no context, just those two ominous words. I spent the next hour gathering documentation system logs, showing no Peterson outages, email trails of my warnings about the NextGen configuration performance reviews from before Robert became manager, all demonstrating my consistent excellence. I would not walk into this ambush unprepared. As I approached Robert's office at noon, I could see him through the glass wall speaking animatedly on the phone. When he noticed me waiting, he abruptly ended his call and waved me in without a smile. Close the door, he instructed coldly. I sat across from him, maintaining eye contact despite my racing heart. Sophia, your performance has become increasingly problematic, he began without preamble. You consistently undermine my authority question directives, and now we have a major client outage that went unaddressed. Robert, I have the system logs right here, I interjected, pulling out my tablet. There was no Peterson outage last night, or at any point in the past week. Additionally, Peterson was reassigned to Jessica months ago as part of your own reorganization plan. His eyes narrowed. The logs can be manipulated, and regardless of official assignments as senior engineer, you have oversight responsibility for all systems. For the next 45 minutes, Robert lobbed accusation after accusation, most either fabricated or grossly misrepresented. Each time I presented evidence to counter his claims, he shifted to a new angle of attack. It became clear this wasn't about performance at all. It was about establishing a paper trail to justify whatever he planned to do next. Furthermore, he continued, his voice rising, your possessive attitude toward the NextGen account is creating a single point of failure. No one else can properly manage that system because you've intentionally made yourself indispensable. That's not true, I defended. I've documented all procedures and shared them with the team. The system has specific requirements from the client that make standardization difficult, which I've explained repeatedly. Your explanations sound more like excuses, he snapped. From now on, you will implement all standardized protocols as directed without question, and you will cross-train Jessica on all NextGen systems immediately. The launch is in 2 days, I reminded him. Making significant changes now would be irresponsible. That's not your decision to make. He shuffled some papers on his desk, clearly signaling the end of the discussion. I expect full compliance by end of day tomorrow, or there will be consequences. I left his office shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Marcus, who took one look at my face and pulled me into an empty meeting room. "That bad, huh?" he asked, closing the door. I nodded, struggling to maintain my composure. "He's building a case against me, creating phantom problems, blaming me for systems I don't even manage anymore." Marcus lowered his voice. "Listen, this isn't just paranoia. I overheard him talking to HR yesterday. He wants to restructure the team and bring in his own people from his previous company. You're too established, too respected by clients. You're in his way." The confirmation of my suspicions should have been validating, but instead it only deepened my anxiety. What about NextGen? Their launch is everything to them, and he's demanding changes that could jeopardize it all. I wish I could help more, but he's already watching me too. Just document everything and be careful. That afternoon, email exchanges between Robert and me grew increasingly tense. Each directive from him seemed designed to either set me up for failure or force me to compromise system integrity. I carefully worded each response to acknowledge his authority, while expressing professional concerns about client impact, always supported by technical details. At 6 p.m., most of the staff had gone home, but I remained at my desk running additional system checks on the NextGen terminal. A message popped up from Alan at NextGen. "Sophia, just checking in before our final pre-launch meeting tomorrow. Any concerns from your end?" I stared at the message, torn between professional honesty and corporate politics. After careful consideration, I replied, "Systems are currently stable. I recommend no configuration changes before launch to maintain this stability. We'll be personally monitoring throughout the event." At 7:30 p.m., I finally packed up to leave. As I walked past Robert's office, I noticed the light still on. Through the glass, I could see him hunched over his computer, scrolling through what appeared to be performance reports with my name highlighted throughout. The knot in my stomach tightened further. That night, I barely slept. I kept my laptop beside my bed, checking the NextGen system every hour to ensure nothing had changed. By morning, exhaustion had hardened into resolve. I would protect my clients' interests and my professional integrity regardless of the personal cost. Tuesday dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside TechVision's offices. The NextGen product launch was scheduled for 2 p.m. The following day, leaving precious little time for final preparations, I arrived at 6:30 a.m. A full hour before anyone else typically showed up, determined to ensure everything was perfect for tomorrow's event. As I logged into the main terminal, a warning notification immediately caught my attention. There had been 3 failed authentication attempts on the NextGen system at 5:45 a.m., followed by a partial configuration change that had triggered a security protocol. The system had automatically reverted to its secure state, but the attempt itself was concerning. The access logs showed the attempts came from within our network, but didn't identify the specific user. Given recent events, I had little doubt who was responsible. Rather than confront Robert directly, I documented the incident, meticulously taking screenshots and noting timestamps. I then implemented additional monitoring alerts that would notify me of any further tampering. By 8 a.m., I had verified that all systems were functioning correctly and ran a complete simulation of the demonstration environment that NextGen would use for their launch. Everything performed flawlessly. I made a final backup of the entire configuration, storing it both on our secure server and on an encrypted USB drive that I kept in my bag, a precaution that would later prove invaluable. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. It was Alan Reynolds from NextGen. "Good morning, Sophia," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "We just had our final executive review for tomorrow's launch. Everyone's extremely nervous given how much is riding on this. I need your personal assurance that everything is ready on your end." "Alan, I can absolutely confirm that the demonstration environment is stable and performing optimally," I assured him. "I've been here since early morning running final checks. You have nothing to worry about from a technical standpoint." "That's exactly what I needed to hear," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Our CEO will be making the presentation himself, and the board of directors will be in attendance, along with major media outlets and analysts. There's no room for even minor glitches." "I understand completely. I'll be monitoring everything personally throughout the event." "Thank you, Sophia. Your dedication has always been one of the reasons we continue working with TechVision." I had just ended the call when Robert strode into the office area, his face already set in a scowl. He made a beeline for my desk, not bothering with a greeting. "Was that NextGen on the phone?" he demanded. "Yes, Alan was confirming that our systems are ready for tomorrow's launch. Robert's jaw tightened. All client communications should go through me first. How many times do I need to remind you of the proper channels? Alan called me directly, I explained calmly. It would have been unprofessional not to answer. And I suppose you reassured him without consulting me about our readiness status. The system is fully operational and stable. I've been running diagnostics since early morning. Including the standardized protocols I mandated. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. I took a deep breath before responding. Robert, implementing those changes now less than 30 hours before their launch would introduce unnecessary risk. The current configuration has been thoroughly tested and is performing perfectly. His face flushed red. So you've directly disregarded my instructions. Again. I've prioritized system stability for a critical client event based on my technical expertise and knowledge of their specific requirements. I countered, keeping my voice steady, despite the tension building in my chest. By now, other team members had arrived and were watching our exchange with poorly disguised concern. Robert seemed to notice the audience and lowered his voice, though his intensity remained. My office, now. I followed him to his glass-walled office, aware of the eyes tracking our movement. Inside, Robert closed the door, and the blinds unusual for our normally open office culture. Sit down, he ordered, pointing to the chair across from his desk. I complied, maintaining my professional composure, despite the adrenaline now coursing through my system. Sophia, your continued insubordination has left me with no choice, he began, his tone coldly formal. You have repeatedly undermined my authority, refused to implement directed changes, and created a toxic environment for the rest of the team. That's not true, I protested. I've only expressed professional concerns about changes that could impact client systems, especially with such critical timing. Your professional concerns sound remarkably like someone who thinks she knows better than her manager, he snapped. The reality is, you've built yourself a little fiefdom here, making yourself the gatekeeper of our biggest client because you enjoy the power. The accusation was so absurd that I nearly laughed. Robert, my only concern has been ensuring next-gen systems function correctly for their launch. Their success directly impacts TechVision's reputation and future business. Don't pretend this is about the client, he said dismissively. This is about you refusing to be a team player under new leadership. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and opened it to reveal what appeared to be an HR form. I've consulted with Human Resources, and they agree that your behavior constitutes grounds for immediate termination. The word hit me like a physical blow. Termination. Over protecting a client's interests. Effective immediately, your employment with TechVision is terminated, he continued, pushing the form toward me. You'll be paid through the end of the week, but I need you to clear out your desk and leave the premises now. My mind raced through options. I could appeal to the technical director or even the COO, both of whom had always valued my work. I could refuse to leave until speaking with HR directly. But the glint of satisfaction in Robert's eyes made one thing clear. This was personal for him, and escalating now would only make things worse. May I at least ensure that my current projects are properly handed off? I asked, thinking of the next-gen launch tomorrow. That won't be necessary, he replied smugly. I'll be personally overseeing the next-gen account from now on. In fact, I insist that you shut down your workstation immediately and hand over all access credentials before you leave. I stared at him incredulously. Robert, the terminal requires specific. Just shut it down, he interrupted sharply. I don't need your explanations anymore. Shut down your workstation and leave. Now. Something in his tone, the sheer dismissive arrogance of it, made a decision crystallize in my mind. If he wanted me to shut down my workstation exactly as instructed, then that's precisely what I would do. I stood up, my voice remarkably steady. As you wish. I'll shut down my workstation and leave immediately. I walked back to my desk, aware of Robert following closely behind me. My colleagues watched in stunned silence as I collected my personal items into a small box. Then, with deliberate calm, I sat at my terminal one last time. I looked up at Robert, who stood watching with arms crossed. You want me to shut down my workstation, correct? Yes, he confirmed impatiently. Log out and power it down. With 3 keystrokes, I initiated the shutdown sequence for the dedicated next-gen terminal, the only direct connection to their demonstration environment, configured with specific security protocols that only I fully understood. The screen went black, and the system powered down with a soft whir. I stood up, picked up my box of belongings, and walked toward the exit without looking back. As I pushed through the glass doors into the bright morning sunshine, a strange mix of emotions washed over me: anger, relief, and an unsettling sense that this wasn't truly the end of the story. Little did I know how right that instinct would prove to be. The Seattle sunshine felt surreal as I walked to my car, the small box of personal items surprisingly light in my arms. 5 years of dedicated work reduced to a coffee mug, a few framed photos, and a plant. I sat in my car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed with text messages from Marcus and Jessica, both expressing shock and asking if I was okay. I appreciated their concern, but couldn't bring myself to respond just yet. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps. I drove to a nearby coffee shop, ordered the largest Americano they offered, and found a quiet corner table. As I sipped the bitter coffee, my professional training began to override my emotional response. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything that had happened, from Robert's initial hostile behavior to my abrupt termination. If nothing else, this record might help me during future job interviews when explaining my sudden departure from TechVision. At 11:27 a.m., just over an hour after I had left the office, my phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. "Sophia, where are you?" His voice was hushed and urgent. "At Cafe Vita near the office." "Why?" "It's complete chaos here. The next-gen system went offline about 20 minutes after you left, and no one can get it back up." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "What do you mean offline? The shutdown should have been temporary. Anyone should be able to restart it." Marcus gave a humorless laugh. "Should be able to, sure, but no one has your access credentials, and apparently there's some custom authentication protocol that's blocking every attempt to reboot. Robert's been trying different combinations for the past 40 minutes and is getting nowhere." I closed my eyes, remembering the special security measures I had implemented at NextGen's specific request. The system required multi-factor authentication that included a hardware key that stayed locked in my desk drawer, a drawer that Robert presumably hadn't thought to check before escorting me out. "Has anyone called Alan at NextGen yet?" I asked, dreading the answer. "That's the best part," Marcus said, his voice dropping even lower. "Alan and their COO, Patricia Williams, just showed up for a surprise final inspection before tomorrow's launch. They're in the conference room right now with Robert, who's making excuses about routine maintenance." Oh God. The implications were sinking in fast. "Marcus, that system needs to be online for their launch tomorrow. There's no backup connection with the same configuration." "I know, and from the shouting I just heard from the conference room, I think they've figured that out too." As if on cue, my phone beeped with an incoming call. The caller ID displayed a number I recognized immediately. Patricia Williams, NextGen's Chief Operating Officer. "Marcus, I need to go. NextGen is calling me directly." "Good luck." "And Sophia." For what it's worth, everyone here thinks this is insane. I switched to the incoming call, taking a deep breath to steady my voice. "Hello, this is Sophia." "Sophia, this is Patricia Williams." Her voice was controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension that I had never heard from her before. "I'm currently at your office for a final systems check before tomorrow's launch, and I've just been informed that not only is our demonstration environment offline, but you are no longer with the company. Can you explain what's happening?" I chose my words carefully. "Patricia, I was terminated this morning and instructed to shut down my workstation and leave immediately. I followed those instructions exactly as given." A moment of silence followed. Then, "Are you telling me that your manager directed you to shut down the only connection to our demonstration environment less than 24 hours before our global product launch?" "He specifically ordered me to shut down my workstation and leave." I attempted to explain the implications, but he interrupted and insisted I comply immediately. I heard muffled voices in the background. Then Patricia's voice became clearer again. "Sophia, our product launch is scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. We have media arriving from across the country. Our CEO is giving the presentation personally, and our entire board will be in attendance. This launch represents 2 years of development and millions in investment. We cannot afford any technical issues." "I understand completely, Patricia. Your manager, Robert, seems unable to restore the system. He's claiming you intentionally locked him out." I suppressed a sigh. "The system uses multi-factor authentication that includes a hardware key stored in my desk drawer. This was implemented at NextGen's request for enhanced security. All procedures are documented in the system manual, which is stored on the shared drive. More muffled conversation then. Patricia's voice turned surprisingly direct. Sophia, I need to ask you something, and I want complete honesty. Were you fired because you refused to make changes that might jeopardize our launch? The question caught me off guard with its accuracy. I expressed professional concerns about implementing untested configuration changes so close to your launch date. Those concerns were not well received. Patricia's next words were clipped and decisive. I see. Sophia, our launch cannot be delayed. The market is expecting this announcement, and we have coordinated with partners worldwide. I need to know, can you fix this situation? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Could I fix it? Technically, yes. But should I help the company that had just fired me? The ethical dilemma was real, but brief. This wasn't about TechVision or Robert. It was about NextGen and the hundreds of people who had worked tirelessly on this product launch. Yes, I can restore the system. But I've been terminated and escorted from the building. I no longer have access. That can be arranged, Patricia replied firmly. How quickly can you return to the office? I glanced at my watch. I'm nearby. I could be there in 15 minutes. Do it. I'll handle the rest. As I drove back toward the TechVision building, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction knowing that Robert's hasty decision had backfired so spectacularly. Another part felt genuine concern for NextGen and my former teammates who were caught in the crossfire. And a small human part of me wondered how Robert would react to my return under these circumstances. I pulled into the parking garage and took the elevator to our floor, my keycard still working despite my termination, an oversight that spoke to the rushed nature of my dismissal. When the elevator doors opened, I was met by Patricia Williams herself, her usual polished appearance, slightly disrupted by the tension of the situation. Thank you for coming back, Sophia, she said, extending her hand. Our Chief Technology Officer is on a video call with the team right now. We need that system restored as quickly as possible. As we walked toward the office area, I asked, Where is Robert? Patricia's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. In a meeting with your company's COO. We entered the main workspace to find a flurry of activity. Several engineers, including Marcus and Jessica, were gathered around my former terminal, looking frustrated and concerned. When they saw me, their expressions shifted to visible relief. Sophia's here, Marcus announced unnecessarily but with obvious gladness. I moved to my former desk, noting that nothing had been disturbed, aside from the personal items I had taken. Has anyone located the hardware key? I asked, pulling open my desk drawer. Jessica shook her head. We didn't know what we were looking for until Marcus mentioned it about 20 minutes ago. The small USB device was exactly where I had left it, in the back corner of the drawer beneath a stack of sticky notes. I held it up. This is part of the multi-factor authentication system that NextGen requested. Now, let's get this terminal back online. As I sat down at the familiar desk, a strange calm settled over me. This was my element, the technical work I excelled at. Politics and personalities faded away as I focused on the task at hand. The terminal powered up, and I began the authentication process, explaining each step to the team gathered around me. The system requires 3 factors: the hardware key, a password, and a biometric confirmation, I explained, as my fingers moved across the keyboard. NextGen specifically requested this level of security for their demonstration environment. Within minutes, the terminal was fully operational, connection to NextGen's environment restored. I ran a quick diagnostic to confirm everything was functioning correctly. System is back online and stable, I announced, turning to Patricia. All configurations are intact and the connection is secure. Patricia's shoulders visibly relaxed. Thank God, she murmured then, more formally. Thank you, Sophia. You've potentially saved us from a disastrous situation. Just as I was showing Patricia the system status dashboard, the conference room door opened. Robert emerged, followed by a tall woman I recognized as Diane Foster, TechVision's Chief Operating Officer. Robert's face cycled through several emotions when he saw me. Surprise, anger, and then something that looked remarkably like fear. Diane Foster approached our group, her expression unreadable. Miss Williams, I understand the system is now operational. Yes, Patricia confirmed. Thanks to Sophia's intervention, we're back on track for tomorrow's launch. Diane turned to me. Sophia, thank you for coming back to assist with this situation. Would you join me in my office when you're finished here? I believe we have some matters to discuss. Her tone gave nothing away, but the fact that she was speaking to me directly rather than through Robert suggested this conversation would be significant. Of course, I agreed. I just need a few more minutes to verify system stability and brief the team on monitoring procedures. Diane nodded and returned to the conference room, gesturing for Robert to follow her. As the door closed behind them, Marcus leaned close to whisper, "The COO has been in there with Robert for almost an hour. I've never seen her look so angry." I focused on completing the system checks deliberately, not speculating about what might be happening in that conference room. Whatever the outcome, I had done the right thing professionally by ensuring NextGen's launch could proceed as planned. As I finished briefing the team on monitoring the system overnight, Patricia approached me again. "Sophia, I want to personally thank you for your professionalism today. Not many people would have returned to help after being treated so poorly." "The launch is important," I said simply. 2 years of work by your team deserves its moment." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "When this is all over, I'd like to have a conversation with you." "My card." She handed me a sleek business card with her direct number handwritten on the back. With the system restored and stable, I finally made my way to Diane Foster's office, uncertain what awaited me there, but confident that I had acted with integrity throughout this ordeal. Diane Foster's office occupied the corner of the executive floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of downtown Seattle. As I entered, she gestured for me to take a seat across from her imposing desk. Unlike Robert's office, hers held very few personal items. Just a few awards, a single family photo facing away from visitors, and a collection of business books arranged by color. Everything about the space conveyed precision and authority. "Thank you for coming back today, Sophia," she began, her tone measured. "I understand you were terminated this morning." "Yes, that's correct. And yet you returned to assist with the next-gen system when contacted. May I ask why?" The question seemed like a test, though, of what I wasn't entirely sure. "Professional responsibility," I answered honestly. Regardless of my employment status, I couldn't allow NextGen's launch to fail when I had the ability to prevent that outcome. Diane nodded slightly, making a note on the legal pad in front of her. "Patricia Williams speaks very highly of you. She made it quite clear that NextGen's relationship with TechVision is largely based on their confidence in your technical expertise. We've built a strong working relationship over the years," I acknowledged. "Indeed." Diane leaned back in her chair, studying me intently. "Sophia, I'm going to be direct with you. The situation this morning represents a significant failure of management at TechVision. Before we discuss next steps, I need to understand exactly what transpired from your perspective." For the next 30 minutes, I provided a detailed account of the events leading up to my termination, from Robert's insistence on system changes before the launch to his increasingly hostile behavior and ultimate decision to fire me. I kept my narrative factual and professional, focusing on technical concerns rather than personal conflicts. "You mentioned documentation of your concerns about the proposed system changes," Diane noted. "Do you have copies of those communications?" "Yes," I confirmed, retrieving my laptop from my bag. "I have emails, system logs, and meeting notes documenting all technical recommendations and concerns." I pulled up several key documents, including my emails warning about the risks of changing configurations before the launch, and logs showing the attempted unauthorized access to the system. Diane reviewed them carefully, her expression becoming increasingly grave. "These logs show attempted system modifications using Robert's credentials outside of normal business hours," she observed. "Were these changes authorized or communicated to the team?" "No," I replied. "In fact, I specifically advised against any configuration changes this close to the launch event." Diane made another note before closing my laptop and returning it. Her next question caught me off guard. "Sophia, if you were still employed by TechVision, what would your recommendation be for handling the NextGen account moving forward?" The hypothetical nature of the question gave me pause. Was she simply gathering information, or was there more to this conversation than a post-mortem on a management failure? "Honestly," I asked, and at her nod continued. "I would recommend maintaining the current system configuration through tomorrow's launch and for at least a week afterward. Then, if changes are desired, implementing them incrementally with proper testing between each phase. I would also suggest improving our documentation to ensure multiple team members understand the special requirements of this environment." "That sounds like a reasonable approach," Diane agreed. She checked her watch, then stood abruptly. I need to speak with the rest of the executive team. Would you be willing to wait in the conference room for a short time? There's coffee and water available. Of course I agreed, though. Uncertainty about my situation was growing by the minute. The conference room Diane directed me to was small but comfortable with views of Puget Sound in the distance. Through the glass walls, I could see increased activity in the executive suite, with Diane moving between offices, folder in hand. Robert was nowhere to be seen. After about 20 minutes, the door opened, and Patricia Williams entered along with Alan Reynolds from Next General. Sophia Patricia greeted me warmly. Alan and I wanted to thank you personally before we head back to our office. The system is running perfectly now, and our technical team has confirmed everything is ready for tomorrow. I'm glad I could help, I replied genuinely, relieved that their launch was back on track. Alan stepped forward, extending his hand. Your professionalism today speaks volumes about your character. Not many people would have returned to help after being terminated. The success of your launch has always been my priority, I explained. That didn't change just because my employment status did. Patricia exchanged a glance with Alan before adding, We've expressed our concerns to your executive team about how this situation was handled. NextGen values partners who understand the critical nature of our business and respond accordingly. Before I could formulate a response to this loaded statement, Diane Foster returned, accompanied by Brian Phillips, the technical director. Patricia Allen, thank you for your patience today, Diane said smoothly. I can assure you that TechVision takes your concerns very seriously, and we're implementing immediate changes to ensure this type of situation never recurs. After NextGen's representatives departed, Diane turned to me. Sophia, the executive team has reviewed the circumstances of your termination and the events that followed. We believe a serious error in judgment occurred. Brian Phillips, whom I had always respected for his technical knowledge, spoke up. The protocols you established for the NextGen system were appropriate and well documented. The proposed changes would indeed have introduced unnecessary risk before their launch. Diane nodded in agreement. Furthermore, your willingness to return and restore the system demonstrates a commitment to professional ethics that aligns with TechVision's core values. She placed a folder on the conference table and slid it toward me. We would like to offer you reinstatement effective immediately with an adjustment to your position and compensation. I opened the folder to find an employment contract outlining a new role, Director of Client Systems, reporting directly to Brian rather than Robert, with a substantial increase in salary and expanded responsibilities. This is unexpected. I managed, genuinely surprised by this turn of events. It shouldn't be, Brian said frankly. Your technical expertise and client relationship skills are exactly what we need in this role. The restructuring creates a more appropriate reporting relationship and recognizes your contributions to the company. And Robert, I couldn't help asking. Diane's expression remained neutral, but her tone cooled slightly. Robert has been reassigned to an internal systems role with no client contact or management responsibilities. His future with the company will depend on his performance in that capacity. The implications were clear. Robert had been effectively demoted, his authority stripped away as consequence for his actions. We understand if you need time to consider the offer, Diane added. Today's events were undoubtedly stressful and... No need, I interrupted, surprising myself with the decisiveness. I accept the position. TechVision has been my professional home for 5 years, and I'd like to continue building on what we've accomplished. Relief visibly washed over Brian's face. Excellent. We'll need you tomorrow for the NextGen launch, of course. And perhaps next week we can discuss your ideas for improving our client system management protocols. As the meeting concluded and we stood to leave, Diane held back slightly, speaking quietly so only I could hear. For what it's worth, Sophia, I apologize for the company's failure to recognize this situation sooner. It shouldn't have reached this point. Thank you, I replied, simply appreciating the acknowledgement. I returned to my desk. My same desk, though it felt different now, to find my team waiting anxiously for news. Well, Marcus prompted, unable to contain his curiosity. I've been reinstated, I told them, still processing the rapid reversal of fortune myself. Actually, I've been promoted to Director of Client Systems. Jessica broke into a wide smile. That's amazing, but not surprising. You literally saved the day. What about Robert Daniel? Asked the question everyone was thinking. Reassigned. No more client contact or management responsibilities. Marcus let out a low whistle. Karma works fast sometimes. As my teammates drifted back to their workstations, I sat at my terminal running one final check on the next-gen system before heading home. Tomorrow would bring the product launch, followed by significant changes to my role and responsibilities. But for now, I felt a profound sense of vindication and relief. Sometimes simply doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, leads to the best possible outcome. 1 month after the next-gen product launch, I sat in my new office reviewing the quarterly client satisfaction reports. The launch had been a resounding success, with technology media outlets praising the seamless demonstration and innovative features of next-gen's new product. Their stock price had jumped 15% in the week following the announcement, and internal rumors suggested our contract with them would be extended for another 3 years. My new role as Director of Client Systems came with a corner office, a dedicated team of 6 engineers, and the authority to implement the improvements I had long advocated for. The transition had been surprisingly smooth, with most of my colleagues expressing genuine happiness at my promotion. Even the executive team, initially concerned about the disruption caused by Robert's actions, had come to see the incident as an opportunity for positive organizational change. Robert himself had resigned 2 weeks after being reassigned. I heard through the office grapevine that he had secured a position at a smaller company across town, hopefully in a role better suited to his actual skills rather than his ambitions. I wished him no ill will. The experience had taught me that harboring resentment only restricts your own growth. The most significant change, however, had been in my relationship with Next General. Patricia Williams had called me personally the day after the successful launch, expressing not just gratitude, but a desire to deepen our company's partnership. "Your handling of the situation showed us exactly the kind of partner we want for our critical system," she had told me. "Professional integrity isn't just a nice-to-have. It's essential when so much is at stake." That conversation led to NextGen signing a new expanded contract with TechVision, specifically requesting me as their account director. The contract's value was triple our previous agreement, making it the largest in our company's history. Diane Foster had personally delivered the news, acknowledging that my actions had not just saved a client relationship but substantially grown it. My team had expanded accordingly, with Marcus taking on the role of technical lead and Jessica being promoted to senior systems engineer. We implemented a comprehensive cross-training program to ensure that critical client systems always had multiple team members who understood their configuration and maintenance requirements. No more single points of failure, no more knowledge silos that could be exploited or become vulnerabilities. As I looked out my office window at the Seattle skyline, I reflected on the journey of the past month. What had begun as one of the worst days of my professional life had transformed into a catalyst for positive change, not just for me personally, but for the entire organization. The most profound lesson I had learned wasn't about technical systems or corporate politics, though I had certainly gained insights in those areas. The real lesson was about staying true to your professional principles, even when doing so comes at a personal cost. By prioritizing the client's needs and the integrity of the work itself, I had ultimately created a better outcome for everyone involved, even Robert, who now had the opportunity to find a role better aligned with his actual abilities. I had also learned about the power of calm competence in a crisis. When the system went down and panic ensued, it wasn't dramatic accusations or emotional appeals that saved the day. It was the quiet, methodical application of technical knowledge. Excellence speaks for itself, often more eloquently than any self-promotion could. Perhaps most importantly, I had discovered the liberation that comes from letting go of the need to be right in the moment. When Robert was berating me, when he was dismissing my concerns and ultimately firing me, I could have fought harder, escalated the conflict, or refused to leave. Instead, I accepted the temporary setback with dignity, trusting that truth and competence would eventually prevail. That patience had been rewarded more completely than I could have imagined. A knock at my office door interrupted my reflection. It was Marcus holding a tablet with our latest system performance metrics. "The next-gen environment is running at optimal efficiency," he reported. "The improvements we implemented last week have reduced response time by 20%. "Perfect timing," I smiled. "I have a call with Patricia in 10 minutes to discuss their expansion plans for next quarter." As Marcus left, I turned back to the window for one final moment of reflection. The path forward was clear now, built on a foundation of technical excellence, professional integrity, and genuine care for the success of our clients. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply doing your job exceptionally well and letting the results speak for themselves. Have you ever been in a situation where following instructions exactly as given led to unexpected consequences? Or have you experienced a workplace conflict that ultimately led to positive change? I would love to hear your stories in the C's. Comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life workplace lessons. Remember, sometimes the most challenging moments in our careers become the turning points that lead to our greatest growth. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to maintain your integrity, even when it isn't the easiest path.